What up, Razzballers? Welcome back to another Mock Draft Monday. Today, we're talking Dynasty. Before we get into the month of August and start wrapping in our redraft, friends, we're talking Dynasty here. We got a single quarterback Dynasty Mock Draft. We're drafting from the 12 on the turn. Sky and Bob with you here on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. What up, everybody? Good evening. Happy Monday. Bob LaMarco in the guest seat. Love to see that. Sky Guasco here as your host. Bob and I have not done a duo episode in quite a while, so it's refreshing to get the half the quad box, if you will. Tonight we got some fun here. We got another Mock Draft Monday. Very excited to get through another mock every single week. We get updates. Things change. We're doing Dynasty. We're doing Superflex. We're doing single quarterback. We got tight end premium. We got running back, wide receiver heavy. We're getting into redraft as well as the calendar turns to August. And Bob, we're less than 2 months. We got about 7 weeks until fake football for now, but NFL players on an NFL field coming up in a few weeks. Happy Monday, my friend. Great to have you back. Bobby LaMarco on the Xbox. I am Sky Guasco as well. Everything Razzball at RAZZBALL on the Xbox. And of course, you can find everything repurposed on the podcast side. For those of you that like to listen to it on the go, that's the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, anywhere you listen to audio. And of course, all of our amazing writers and articles at football.razzball.com. Bob, I'm going to kick it off here. Who is somebody that's maybe jumped on your radar that you hadn't necessarily had in the spring and the summer, but as camps are picking up, these rookies are starting to perform. New guys are landing in their new positions. Welcome in, my friend. It's great to do a show with just you and me. It's been a long time, but also, who are you feeling kind of tickling the fancy a little bit that wasn't on your radar up until the last couple of days?
Well, first off, Sky, I mean, wow. Talk about just when you do a podcast with the guy that you've been doing it with for years, it's like you just feels different. You know what I mean? I'm getting emotional. A little cheer jerker here. Got to get the emotions out in July because August, September, we better be just rolling. Folks.
We have no time. No time for tears once August hits.
Yeah, and
get them out. Get them out, Bob.
Just two things I want to start off with. Number one, Sky set me up to fail here. Reason why is because training camps didn't start yet for most teams. So when you say this, I actually took it as like what happened over the weekend with the 4 teams, Bears, Texans, Chiefs. And so I will say this, Xavier Worthy, some of the splash plays he made over the weekend and how he connected, by the way, with Patrick Mahomes, playing in team drills with Patrick Mahomes is important. But the guy that's on my radar, maybe not necessarily for redraft, maybe a little more dynasty focus, is Dameon Pierce. So last year was a dumpster fire. They made a switch to the new offense with the Texans with Bobby Slolik, and he was not good. He got totally overshadowed Devin Singletary. But this offseason, they have come out and said he looks completely different. He looks like a much better back. This guy has been left for dead. And by the way, if you're a Joe Mixon dynasty owner, I suggest you just go poke around the Dameon Pierce owner now, because if something happens to Mixon, which has happened in the past, if Pierce can finally regain that rookie form, you got a guy who could be a solid RB2 for you if you lose Mixon. So he's probably the one guy that over the weekend I made some inquiries about, Sid. So what about you, Sky? What are you thinking?
I love how you set that up. First of all, let's not forget Dameon Pierce did have over 1,000 yards as a rookie on a not good Texans team. Now the Texans are all of a sudden one of our favorite offenses in the NFL. So don't forget about that. And it is handcuff season. So in Dynasty, go get those guys for cheap or free. I like that call a lot. On top of that, Xavier Worthy and Mahomes, it was the ESPN top highlight. So we'd love to see those splash plays. And of course, he's getting more work right now with Rashee Rice out and limited at minimum, and Hollywood Brown trying to earn his stripes as well. But the new hotness there out of Texas, Worthy, who we like a lot here on the program. I like that. Great call. Well, let's get into it here. We got a mock draft tonight. We're going to be using the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard, good friends of Fantasy Pros, not a sponsor, but we like to use their tool. It is free, and we're able to use it. We've already set up some of the calculations here to save some time on the episode. Bob and I are going to be drafting on the backside here at the 12 spot. So we're going to be drafting 12, and then, of course, the first pick of the second round. This is a single quarterback. Last week, Jeff and I did a super flex mock, so we're going to just trim that and do a single quarterback. So we do not need to go automatically in the quarterback position. This is Dynasty. So those of you on the YouTube channel, which we'll talk about in a second, right away, Christian McCaffrey at the 112, you're probably like, excuse me, what is happening here? Couple things. It's a Dynasty. So we'll see what happens. I love that a lot. Jamie in the chat already. Good evening, my friend. Great to have you on the program always. Bob, let's get right to it. We're not going to be drafting a deep roster per usual to save time this time of year. As we get into later August and right before September, we are going to be taking the time to draft a full roster and also drafting a deeper bench. So sometimes we get comments. You guys are like, hey, man, like, how do you know what your team's going to look like if you don't have a fourth, fifth receiver and deep running backs and all that kind of stuff? Second quarterback. Great questions. We save it for the program here, but we will get into that as we go deeper into the summer. Bob, we're on the clock here. We don't have a clock. We turned it off so that we can talk through these things, but it is our pick. And we have Christian McCaffrey, best available, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave, just to name a few on the top 5. Who are some of these guys that jump off the page here? And, of course, a few of the picks that went before us, Breece Hall, Marvin Harrison Jr., a top 7 pick in all Dynasty formats, Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Malik Neighbors on your Giants, and A.J. Brown, who I know that you've been excited about as well. So, of course, we have picks back-to-back here at the 12 and the 2-1. Let's talk about that 12 pick first. And if it is a keeper league, then your pick does matter. Otherwise, we're just picking 2 guys back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dynasty league, of course. So, these are guys you're looking to have for the decade plus. But I'm sorry. I have a very unpopular take, I think. But I draft as if it's just this year. And
Same.
the reason why I say this is because a lot of people think we can predict this year. And we are struggling to do that. And then we think we could do 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the line. We can't do that. Injuries, coaching changes, player changes, personnel, all that stuff. And to be honest with you, like, I could tell you this, if you're in a startup league right now, there's nothing better than winning the first title. You could basically name the trophy after yourself, right? So if you're in a dynasty league with your friends and you win the first one, basically get the first trophy. You're like, hey, my name's on this thing first. You get the bragging rights right away. By the way, and you get money to pay for the league for the next decade, right? So that's kind of the point here.
Exactly.
And so, and by the way, too, the other thing that, well, a lot of the win now stuff is players that are elite this season will slip, a.k.a. Christian McCaffrey. This is a single QB league. Christian McCaffrey falls to 12. It's a no-brainer. And by the way, guys like McCaffrey still probably have another 3 years of elite production. So I'm not sweating it. And it's not as if you win now this year that next year you don't get picks. But you still get picks. And you get to make rookie picks. And you can start building your team younger through the draft. By the way, you could also attack the teams who didn't try to win now, who now all of a sudden are like dead last, second to last, and they have a stud. They'll take a first-round pick, and you just built another stud. You could take studs away from these bad teams because now they know they're not going to win for the next 2 to 3 years, and they want the first-round pick instead. And now you're taking guys like, you can get a Tyreek, you can get another really good player that might be a little bit older, and then you can stack back-to-back championships. So that's why here, to me, it's kind of clear. I'm just going to go off my top 150. I'll go McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, and call it a day. What do you think, Sky?
I like it. I would just throw Puka Nacua in the mix. We all love Cooper Kupp, but in Dynasty, Puka's just getting started, and hopefully Kupp has a few years left, but we'll see what happens to those as those injuries rack up. My only concern with Tyreek Hill is that he's basically talked about retirement already as he gets to his 10th year. So I could see him doing that. But you're right, if we're into it. So Christian McCaffrey's automatic. I would personally go Puka over Tyreek Hill. So let's leave that up to you. Mute.
Awesome. How's that even possible, man? Anyway, I was trying to be respectful. Let Sky get the full ambiance of his voice to the world. So you're welcome, everybody. By the way, Sky Guasco, one of my favorite hosts of all time. I love it, baby. You're great at it.
Thank you.
Anyway, so no problem. Just buttering you up. You know what I mean? It's a long year. I got to get you excited for it, right? So in July, by December, I'm going to hate you. I'm going to be like, you suck, Sky.
Yeah, that's enough of your voice, bro. Jesus.
So here's the thing about Puka. And so I recently moved him ahead of Cooper Kupp, and I moved him almost at the 1-2 turn in my top 150. And he's a guy we could probably talk about your question earlier, a player that he's of course on everybody's radar. I'm not saying that, but I was getting no Puka based on his ADP. And the reason why I bumped him up was if you actually isolate the games with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford played the full game, a lot of people forget that Stafford got hurt in week 8 and missed week 9, and both Puka and Cooper Kupp sucked with the backup. Yeah. Puka, if you just look at the games with Cooper Kupp and Stafford playing the full game, he still averaged over 17 PPR points per game. So he was still putting up top 10 numbers. Now, I get it. We might want to look for the future. Puka's fine here. I will take him. I would have probably gone Tyreek Hill personally, but I think let's think for the future and go totally against what I said earlier. So
the only thing I like where your head's at, and I actually agree with you. I don't want to go all old guys, but they tend to slip. I want to be a bit careful when I'm drafting like that. Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill set my team up for the possibility of next year being like, you know what I mean? And Puka, I think, alleviates that where we have Christian McCaffrey. So that's the only reason I decided to kind of go against the grain there. But all right, so we got the 112. We got Christian McCaffrey. We turn around. We have the first pick in the second round. That's Puka Nacua. After that, I'm just going to blast through these names quickly to give everybody a heads up while Bob kind of calculates our next couple of picks on the 3-4 turn. Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, Sam Laporta. So tight end going at 2-4. Rome Odunze, Drake London. Then we got Barkley, ETN, and Achan. Then we have Olave, Josh Allen, first quarterback off the board at 211. Ayuk, Kenneth Walker on the turn. Your boy Waddle, still a third-round pick. You got to love that, Bob. Kyron Williams, Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes. Then we got Jonathan Brooks, hopefully to stay healthy in Carolina. McBride and Pitts. Then Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, and CJ Stroud right before us. Again, this is a single quarterback league in Dynasty. We're on the clock here, 3-12 and 4-1. We have our stud running back and wide receiver.
Now, the interesting thing here is I believe Cooper Kupp is still on the board. And that's where, where is Kupp? Yeah, Kupp is on the board. And like I said, so when you actually evaluate what I like to do, by the way, Sleeper does a really good job. And I don't know if Sleeper has promoted this, but they actually give you their ADP by different types of leagues. So it's like Dynasty, Redraft, but it's all in one spreadsheet. Is take a look at where the redraft ADP is versus Dynasty, and you can really see the value you can get for guys. Guys that really stand out to me are kind of like Davante Adams, for example, who's going like 42 spots lower in ADP than in Dynasty. And of course, that makes sense. He's 31 years old, but we've known from guys like Larry Fitzgerald and the elite wide receivers, Reggie Wayne, that they could still play well on 32, 33, 34 years old. So if it's a short window now, maybe Davante Adams isn't the play here. But honestly, the guys that are on the board, that they're not, I'm not screaming to grab one of these guys per se. I personally have in my top 150 guys like Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams in the top 20. So honestly, out of these guys, I'm not overly excited to draft any of them. I'm not going to take a quarterback and a single QB that early, especially with so many not going off the board. What's your thoughts here, guys? Anybody on this list stand out to you?
Not necessarily, but Michael Pittman would be fun. I just want to see it with Anthony Richardson coming back. I don't trust Geno Smith enough for DK Metcalf. I love DK by himself, but I don't trust that. Mark Andrews would probably be my pick, and maybe Nico Collins. But now all of a sudden, Nico Collins has Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs there as well. So, here's the deal. I'm down to do – we have, first of all, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on the same team. So that would be a massive commitment to the Rams, obviously. And we have Christian McCaffrey. So if we go, for example, Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, Christian McCaffrey, Kupp, and Adams here, which we could do, we're set up to win the league already. But in a dynasty format, if we just think out, let's, 7 to 10's ambitious. Let's think 2 to 3 years. We probably have the core of those guys, assuming they're healthy, but then we're going to start patching some holes. So if we do that with those top 4 picks and we have 3 quote unquote old guys, I think we need to go youthful on the turnaround, unless we go like an older tight end like Kelsey, who's, still available as well.
I think the biggest thing here is the guys that are our guys, Kamara, Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams. We could definitely get them the next round. I feel like we could, right? Because in current sleeper ADP, these guys are going in the 60s and 60 to 70, all 3 of those guys.
Fifth roundish.
Yeah. So it's the 5-6 turn right there. So honestly, I think that's where we could probably easily get Cooper Kupp and Alvin Kamara in the next round together. So we could, in theory, go after one of these. Now, One thing I'm going to say, I think CJ Stroud is that guy. I think he's awesome. I think it's great. But when you're talking about 3 wide receiver ones on the same offense, it is unprecedented to do. Like there is not to be honest with you, there really isn't any precedent for a team to have support 3 top 20 wide receivers on a consistent basis for 17 games. It hasn't happened, or 16, whatever you want to say. Now, the Rams a few years ago when they had the golf season with, I think it was Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, and Cooper Kupp, but then Kupp went down halfway through that season, and then things got moved around. But those guys did play together really well. But typically, one thing you do see is one of the guys takes a step back a little bit. Now, I think that's probably going to be Tank Dell due to the injury for this season. But I think Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins are still going to be good. But it's hard to imagine one of those guys being a top 5 wide receiver because of the target competition. Michael Pittman, when you look at his situation, it's Anthony Richardson. Is Richardson going to throw 24 times a game and then dominate with his legs and have all this other dual threats going up? And like, how much is that going to impact Michael Pittman? I don't know. So I hesitate on him because like you just brought up, you said you want to see it. And that's how I feel. So the funny thing is all these guys, I'm kind of like, I'd rather just take Cooper Kupp and Kamara now, but that doesn't mean you're getting the value you should get. So I think I'm okay. I wonder where Kyron Williams is right now. Do we know where Kyron's at right now?
I think Kyron went. Go back to the draft board. I'm pretty sure I just called him out. Yeah, he did. Right there. 303.
Oh, good for that team. Yeah, so the running backs like Rashad. I mean, I'm a big James Cook guy.
Jamie's not loving it. Jamie's throwing you a little flack in the chat here about Kyron Williams.
Why is that?
Curious if you're quote unquote off Kyron yet, calling him a bust.
Yeah, I'm not. Honestly, it doesn't even make any sense. Listen, I'm going to say this. Last year we talked about this, Jamie. I'm pretty sure you hammered home Roschon Johnson on me all the time, and I was like, I'm not feeling that one. So you know what? I'm not doing this with you this year, buddy. All right. In all honesty,
shots fired.
Kyron Williams last year was one of only 2 running backs to get over 20 fantasy points. He was completely dominant, and I think we've seen over and over again the Rams want a bell cow workhorse. I think Billy Corum, whatever his name is, he's basically in there to be another workhorse back if Kyron goes down. They want a backup to be a Kyron Williams if he goes down. And that's just how Sean McVay has tried to do it for years. He tried it with Cam Akers after Todd Gurley went down. They tried doing with Cam Akers for a while. Then Sony Michel comes in. They give Sony Michel 20 freaking carries a game at one point. It's just clear as day they want the workhorse to be the main guy, and I think that's Kyron this year. That's why I'm all in on him, but he's gone, so that doesn't really help. James Cook's probably one of my favorite. I mean, Derrick Henry's another good example of like how much more time does he really have, and I think that would be definitely going all in.
We just don't need to do that this pick though. I mean, we're in the what, 3rd, 4th round here. So I personally, of this group right here that we're looking at, I like Nico Collins personally over Tank Dell. And if you look at the tight ends really quick, is Kelsey there? Kelsey is there. Right here. I mean, I personally would go with Kelsey. And I know that like he's getting older and slowing down, whatever. He's still going to be the guy. And Sam Laporta is the only one that I would have in front of him. I like Dalton Kincaid a lot. And we'll see what happens with Mark Andrews coming back and Brock Bowers and whatever. But for me, it'd be Nico Collins and then Travis Kelsey to lock that up. And then I feel like we can get some of the OGs in the 5th and 6th, and we're going to be loving our team with a little bit of youth, but some of the older guys as well that we know, are set it and forget it's.
What about Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts here?
I like it. I just feel in a single quarterback league, there's a lot of different options. I know what's going on in LA, but I'm still a Justin Herbert guy. I think, Jaden Daniels is nice. There's a couple guys that we can team up, with later on. So I'm not in a hurry to get a quarterback necessarily.
Woo.
Show me the draft board. Will you look through this real quick? Show me the draft board so I can get everybody up to speed. All right, we went Travis Kelsey and Nico Collins back to back. Again, if you're in a keeper league, folks, I'm going to say this every mock draft now until we draft in September. If you are in a keeper league, not just a dynasty, but a keeper league, and your draft order matters for keeping players, it matters on the turns when you pick a guy. For example, if I had, I could keep one of these 4 guys, picking Nico Collins in the 4th round versus the 3rd round matters because I'm probably not going to keep Travis Kelce next year in the 3rd round, but I'd love to keep Nico Collins in the 4th versus the 3rd, depending on where my draft pick is. So just be aware of that as you go through. All right, Collins. Then when they had Pittman, Metcalf, Bowers. Bowers is the 5th tight end off the board in Dynasty. Rashad White, Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts do go. Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams went, so he was picked a little bit ahead of where we thought he would go. T. Higgins, Jordan Addison, who hopefully still has a job. Xavier Worthy, who we just talked about. Tank Dell, George Pickens, Dalton Kincaid. James Cook does go. Lad McConkey, who I know we're excited about here on the program. Mark Andrews, Anthony Richardson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Keon Coleman, who I know Jeff loves, and Deebo Samuel, the only wide receiver for the 49ers as of right now. We're back on the clock at 5:12 and 6:01. We still have some of those OGs we talked about, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Cooper Kupp, still on the board, but we also have some youth as well. How are we feeling here with our 5th and 6th pick?
Yeah, I think this is where we make that move. I think we go after the most dominant win now guys. And I think
God, we can get both of them right now.
I mean, we could get both, but I honestly think Cooper Kupp, and I listen, I got a lot of flack. My Cooper Kupp optimism. Listen, in 2022, Cooper Kupp, before going down in week 9, was averaging 25 PPR points per game again.
Yeah, he goes
down. And by the way, he got an ankle injury that season. The Rams were already out of it. They didn't bother bringing him back. Okay. Then he had injuries come with injuries. I get that. But then it was a hamstring injury to start the year. It wasn't his ankle. And then he turned his ankle in week 11. He came back in 2 weeks and was back to normal and dominating again. So it's like, if the ankle injury was truly an ongoing issue for him, and I get it, he's 31 now. We're all going to fade him. But I think at this point, after seeing what he does with Matthew Stafford, when he plays with Stafford, he is a top 10 wide receiver. So I think for me, this is where we make a decision. We're going all in to win the championship this year. To me, it's a PPR league, so I would go Kamara and Kupp and just roll with it. What's your thoughts, Sky?
I personally love championships, so I'm down for that.
They're my favorite. Like, yeah, you might people always say, oh, so if you had a choice between not winning a championship and winning a championship, I go, let me think about that. Let me win a championship. So I'm in. I love it. Let's get it. Alvin Kamara, welcome to the team. Call his parents. His father loves us. So we're
the only kick. Okay. 2 things. The only kickback is, and I know that we're not going to fight about James Conner. It's early. You and I haven't done an episode together in 2 months. We're not doing that right now, so I'm going to squash the beef before it happens. Trey Benson is my dog. I just have to say that. So in another world, I might have gone with Trey Benson there instead, but I like the picks. Next, I will say that we are on the deep turn. So we're talking 2 picks, but then 25 or 23 until we pick again. So quote unquote reaching is valid, I think, for where we're at. So get your guys, right? Right now, our roster, Bob, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara as our running backs, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, yes, both on the Rams, as our wide receivers with Nico Collins, and then King Kelce at tight end. If this team stays healthy, we've already won the championship at least this year. In 3 years from now, we might be scrapping. But who knows? We're not playing for 3 years from now. We're looking to win a ship. Let's see what happens. Cooper Kupp and Alvin Kamara off the board. Then Hawkinson, probably on the pup for a while. Caleb Williams, Jaden Reed, Trey Benson. There's my boy at 605. Brian Thomas, I know we're excited about in Jacksonville. David Njoku, still in the 6th round in Dynasty. Love to see that for him. Rashee Rice doesn't have a job, but that's cool. We got Joe Burrow, DeAndre Swift, Joe Mixon, Kyler Murray, George Kittle, Ramondre Stevenson, Javonte Williams, Mike Evans, who was somebody I was going to throw in the hat with our old guy conversation. I like that pick. Terry McLaurin could have a big bounce back this year. Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Christian Watson, Stephon Diggs, Jake Ferguson, and Evan Ingram going before our 7-12 and 8-1. Bob, we have our tight end. We have 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs. We're very balanced. We do not have a quarterback yet. I'm not really worried about it yet, but we have a very balanced team, obviously leaning old, but we have a little bit of youth there as well with Nico Collins and Puka Nacua. I feel great about the squad so far.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the best thing about our 2 running backs is the value of their handcuffs has completely vanished. Like Elijah Mitchell and even Kendra Miller. By the way, I just traded for Kendra Miller. I had Alvin Kamara in a league. I just got him for a 2025 late second. Like I just won the championship in the league. I traded away my second round pick. It's probably going to be a bottom 3 pick in the second round. And I just got Kendra Miller for that. And like, this is a guy that was going probably in the back of the first round just last year. People are all in on him. They love him. And now he's much cheaper. Elijah Mitchell, by the way, you could probably get for even cheaper than that. Yeah. So we could get those handcuffs much later in the draft if we need to, just to protect ourselves long term. So I have no issue there. But here's the other thing. When you're looking at the onesie positions, tight end and quarterback specifically, you want to make sure you look at the board and see how many people, like we already have Kelsey, great, but what about the quarterback situation? All right. If you look at the board right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the other 11 teams have a quarterback. So the likelihood that, all right, so is there 3 quarterbacks right now? Is there a tier break amongst the quarterbacks that are left, right? So you got Herbert, Jordan Love, Jaden Daniels. Honestly, just from this list alone, I would be okay with any of those guys, even Brock Purdy. So I have no interest in taking a quarterback here. I'll just wait for the next round, because in a single QB league, it's very unlikely these guys are going to take another quarterback anyway. Yeah. So there's probably 2 of those guys will fall back to us. So we can continue to kind of hammer home the running back and wide receiver spots. Now, just how I view the situation, if you look at David Montgomery, there was kind of a weird situation last year. He came out of the gates last year like a complete psychopath. Like, it was amazing to watch. I was like, holy shit, David Montgomery's a league winner. And then he gets hurt, and then Jahmyr Gibbs got hurt, and then they finally all play together, and then he kind of normalizes a little bit. Average RB2. Zamir White's my guy this year. I'm all in. Honestly, I'm all in on Zamir White. Finally, Josh Jacobs leaves the Raiders, and Sky falls in love with him in Green Bay, and now he loves the Raiders running back and Zamir White. All is well in the world. Honestly, he's a youthful running back. I think he's going to be rock solid. Listen, Antonio Pierce said, I want to run the football and get the ball to Devontae Adams. So I think that's really good there. Blake Corum, obviously Aaron Jones and James Conner are just like, Jesus. I mean, James Conner every year, I'll just take him in like the 8th round and no one wants him. I have him on all my teams and don't worry about it. I'll just have an RB2 for 13, 14 weeks and I'll just throw in another guy when I need to. It's absurd, but we could probably even wait on those guys. But those are just 2 guys. I would take Conner here with Zamir White, but let's see what the wide receiver situation is. Now, man, Amari Cooper, why does everybody hate Amari Cooper? Like, all the guy does is like finish as a wide receiver too, and everybody hates him.
It's uncertain quarterbacks constantly for him. I think that's mainly the issue. There's a lot of attractive wide receivers here for me personally. You go up to the top. Everybody's forgotten about Christian Kirk.
Yep.
And he's probably my favorite on this list right now. Godwin and Ridley, I think, have a big bounce back. Deontay Johnson, I don't want right now, but he's like the number 1 probably there in Carolina. Ricky Pearsall, I think, would be a later pick, but he's going to be fun, especially if they get rid of Ayuk for some reason. And I like Amari Cooper. So for me right here, to keep the balance, and also we should say this for the podcasters who don't see the screen, we're not picking a deep bench again. So we have 3 picks left for sake of this episode. On a regular draft, a regular team, Bob, we've got 9 more picks in the Dynasty League or whatever. We can start stashing wide receiver 7s and 8s and shit like that. So we're not going to do it for sake of the show. But we need a quarterback and we have 2 flex positions available. We just talked about the quarterback scenario. I'd like personally to probably go 1 wide receiver, 1 running back here for balance, and then go with our quarterback with our last pick here. And then obviously if we had a later later draft picks or whatever with our bench and stuff, we maybe could, manipulate that a little bit more. But for me personally, I'd like to go probably wide receiver and running back. I love Zamir White. That's my pick too. I've been on him for 2 years and he finally is now getting his opportunity. So I'm all about that. Jalen Warren in a Dynasty League, I think is great because Najee may not have a job next year. Blake Corum, I think, has a good opportunity next year. Marshawn Lloyd, I love in Green Bay for next year. But again, we might be a little premature for those guys because they may not get it this year. Zamir White's my dude. If not, Jalen Warren at running back. And then I love Christian Kirk at wide receiver. Those are my personal picks.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the win now strategy, I do think that if you're looking at your current year type, if you don't do rankings, like if you trust another person, if you go to razzball.com and check out some guys top 150, I don't know.
Pretty good idea to do that.
Try
Probably
it out.
Should.
I was honorable mention top 25 this year in the rankings, so no big deal. All right, so but when I think it is important, like I have Aaron Jones 1 spot ahead of Zamir White in my redraft rankings, but in reality, this is Dynasty. So then the age does matter, and I would flip that. So that's why Zamir White to me is probably the pick for the running back position here. I think the Brian Robinson situation, I think Austin Eckler is going to be a pain in the ass. That's what I think. I think they didn't bring, and I think when you look at the Arizona Cardinals situation under Cliff Kingsbury, the one situation that comes to mind with this backfield is remember when Chase Edmonds was the incumbent and they had Kenyon Drake, but then Chase Edmonds was supposed to be the 1A, and they brought in James Conner from Pittsburgh that season to be the 1B. And then early on that season, they kind of split the backfield. Chase Edmonds went down, then James Conner, of course, did James Conner things. But that season, they both split the backfield. And they were about a 10 to 11 PPR points, and it's just like meh production. I could see them doing something similar with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. And by the way, they do have a rookie quarterback who, by the way, is mobile. That's always going to impact the ceiling of running backs. So I am not a Brian Robinson guy necessarily this season, but let's go Zamir because he's just our guy. He's our sweet angel. We love him. And then I personally think Amari Cooper's the pick.
Cooper, yeah. That's okay. I'm into both of these guys. Christian Kirk for me would be I'm okay with Cooper. We picked Cooper. Christian Kirk would have been my guy. In Dynasty, he's younger and he just has, I think, better opportunity with what Trevor Lawrence should have with the extension and everything else. Amari Cooper in redraft, I like a little bit boomer bust. He's a great best ball ad, whatever. But who knows what we're going to get from Deshaun Watson this year and moving forward. And unfortunately, our savior, Joe Flacco is not on the Browns anymore. So we can't count on him just winning us leagues again.
Joe Flacco, by the way, just for Michael Pittman lovers, if Anthony Richardson goes down this season, what the hell is going to happen with Michael Pittman? I am going to shit my pants every Sunday talking about Michael Pittman with Joe Flacco. That's all I got to tell you.
Can you imagine vintage Austin Collie with Joe Flacco in Indy? I mean, come on. Maybe a little Dallas Clark up the seam. All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Sorry.
Honestly, you could put 3 infants out there with Joe Flacco, and he will rise them to they'll be like Christmas baby Jesus out there. That's all I can tell you. All right, so that's all I know. But
let's
just want to say one thing about Cooper, though. Like,
I understand show me the draft board. Give me that draft board while you're doing that, so everybody could see it, and let us know about him. And we got one pick left, Bob. It's going to be our quarterback for sake of the show.
Yeah. So I think with the Cooper situation, that's important. Is like he did not play bad with. I'm just trying to pull it up because I have the data in here, but he didn't play bad with Deshaun Watson last year. And so if you're looking at like just his Deshaun Watson games, he was still about 14 PPR points per game. So he's still like it. I think Deshaun Watson had a bigger problem with like David Njoku. And I think Cooper was quarterback agnostic, other than it was Dorian Robinson. What was the kid's name? He had 3 names or something. I don't remember what it was. My point is like when it was Flacco or Watson, Cooper was good. So that's why I'm okay with it. And I think Kirk early on in 2024, I like him a lot. But I do think Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, there's just more competition for targets there. But we do have to keep in mind Jerry Jeudy is in Cleveland now. So that is another thing to note there. But go ahead, Scott, kick it off.
Yeah, I like it. We went Zamir White and Amari Cooper back-to-back at 7, 12, and 8-1. We have one more pick for the show. Again, as we get deeper into the summer, we'll have all sorts of deep draft picks with the bench. So know that those are coming. After Zamir White and Amari Cooper on our squad, Bob, I'm going to have you rattle off our squad after this prior to our quarterback pick. David Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Justin Herbert. It's my dog. Jalen Warren and Aaron Jones. So 4 of those running backs we talked about go immediately with Herbert. Then we have Godwin, Leggett, who's the rookie in Carolina. Christian Kirk does go. Then we have Tony Pollard, Goddard, Freiermuth, Komet Kraft, Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers, and then Luke Musgrave, also of the Green Bay Packers, goes after them as the tight ends. We have Tajay Spears, who I know we're all excited about as well. Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown, who, by the way, his name in the system is Hollywood Brown, not Marquise Brown, which his mom probably calls him. It's Hollywood Brown, which I think is awesome. Keenan Allen, talk about OG values in the 9th round in a dynasty league. Love that. Then you can go Jaden Daniels, Blake Corum, Zach Charbonnet, right, Bob? And then Calvin Ridley in Tennessee as well. Last pick, for sake of the show, we are going to go quarterback. Let's see who we've got left and make that decision.
Well, I would say this, that if we were in a normal situation, and James Conner, by the way, is just chilling. He's just chilling, hanging out, whatever. But this is another thing, too, I've kind of realized is that, like, one of the strategies we should have talked about earlier was that
Kendra Miller.
These veteran running backs fall in dynasty drafts.
Yep.
And so
veterans in general.
Drafting a quarterback and tight end early, getting a Kelsey, and let's say you wanted to load up and stack with Mahomes early. Honestly, this is another example of proof that running back veterans, you can find legit RB2s easy because no one wants James Conner. No one wants Aaron Jones. No one wants the guys that we know probably. If you ask most of these people, they'd be like, yeah, I think they'd be RB2s this year, but I don't know where they're going to be done in 3 to 5 years. We don't give a shit. We don't care. So, like, my point is, like, it's okay to pass on running backs early. I know we took CMC. We're not going to pass on CMC at 12. But this is just another reminder that guys like last year, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, all fell late in dynasty drafts. And by the way, this year, no one's upset for having Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara this year because they're probably better spots than they were last year. But I digress. Quarterback. So I think my favorite quarterback is Jordan Love. I honestly think he's the next coming. I think he's if you watch the second half of last year, by the way, if you look at the second half last year, he averaged 26 fantasy points per game. That's the elites. That's the elite status. Yep. And he did that in his first year. And I think with the talent around him, by the way, they just have deep talent. Wicks is like not a starter technically, and he's really good. And like you got Jaden Reed and the types of players they have. Christian Watson, if he can finally stay healthy, got 2 really good tight ends. It's proven it.
Yeah,
and
Romeo Dobbs.
Romeo, yeah.
Plus a better, a nice run game. I like it.
I think Jordan Love would be my pick here. I honestly think even if we, I think at this point too, there's like, I don't think I would risk it. I think at this point of the draft, even if we had more picks and we know that most teams already took quarterbacks, I kind of would want Jordan Love. I think he's going to be special. And I think that's why I want him. So I'm going to end the draft here with Jordan Love. And I do think we got a B-. All right, I'll take it. Well, that was like my favorite grade.
I'll tell you why. First of all, these grades I just never care about. If they're like 96, then I'll tell my friends because it's fun. I'll tell you right now, the reason it's a B-, Bob, is because we picked a bunch of geezers in a dynasty league.
Yeah,
but this entire half-hour show, we've literally said, yeah, but we're interested in winning a championship, and then next year, whoever's left and still in their prime, we have. Whoever's not, we trade away, or we still have picks to like make some moves if we need to. So please, for the folks, let's disregard the 80 out of 100. I'm not worried about that. B-. Let us know from top to bottom what the squad ended up being.
Yeah, so we started off. I'm going to go by our actual starting line: a quarterback, Jordan Love, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Puka, Nico Collins, Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, Zamir White, and Amari Cooper will be our starting lineup heading into 2024. Now, Sky Guasco, I have a question. First one: what's the player that got away? Which player would you have changed and flipped out for in the draft?
We talked about it right off the bat, and I was the Puka guy, and we went with Puka, so I'm happy with that pick. But I would love me to have Tyreek Hill on this squad too. So I don't know that he got away because we got Puka instead and we chose that. But if we go retroactively, Bob, and now that we know that we got Cooper Kupp later on, I don't mind having 2 Rams. We've seen Matt Stafford, be with 2 like he's been able to have multiple wide receivers many, many, many years of his career. So I'm not worried about him being able to do that, assuming they're healthy. However, now that we have Cooper Kupp, if we could just flip a guy real quick, I'd take Puka out, put Tyreek Hill in. We're not losing a step. We're gaining a few 80-yard touchdowns, and I'm more than happy to have that. So I don't know about the player that got away, but I like that. I guess deeper, like down the line there a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I think our quarterback at Jordan Love worked out tremendously. I think there's a big bounce back for Kyler Murray that everybody has forgotten about, especially in rushing quarterback leagues. I think Jaden Daniels is going to surprise a lot of people, and I love that in Dynasty. But Jordan Love, look, he's the cheaper Stroud at this point, right? Everybody knows Stroud. He's going early. Jordan Love is the cheaper version of CJ Stroud right now. So I really like how that rounded out.
Just the quarterback landscape right now is kind of tough because it is super deep this year. By the way, got to love Jalen Hurts. You got to love Patrick Mahomes with all the talent around him now. You got to love the fact that Josh Allen's got the most upside of any quarterback. Even though he has less weapons, he's got the legs. You got Lamar Jackson in the next year with Todd Monken. He's got the better weapons around him now, hopefully. And like, I think when you're looking at these situations and then you're like, well, why am I going to pay for one of those guys when I could get Anthony Richardson, by the way, could lead the all running back quarterbacks in rushing, and he's got good weapons around him. and he's got a good system in place with the team that literally made Jalen Hurts thing. So I struggle because there's guys like that. And then you got Brock Purdy, who I think is going to get better, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
He hurt his shoulder, or what was his elbow? My apologies, the elbow injury in the playoffs, and he missed all of last offseason. And he comes out, and he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks ever. And he's got, by the way, Ricky Parcell is there, who good reports coming out of camp is now your safety net. If something happens to Ayuk, something happened to Debo. So I do struggle with the quarterback situation this year because I feel like I want to be the last one. And by the way, Burrow, just forget about Joe Burrow, by the way, who's just awesome when he's healthy, and he's got, Chase and Higgins now. Kyler, by the way, is another one where look at the situation with Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride, and Michael Wilson looks good. Great Dortches look pretty good in the offseason. I don't know. It's a wild. Anyway, but my point to all that is when I'm looking at the situation and getting Jordan Love where we got him, and Jaden Daniels only going a few picks before him, just makes me feel like, honestly, I want to be the last guy to take a quarterback. I am envious. I will say this, Mike. I think one of my biggest guys this year is Hollywood Brown. I honestly, already, if you look at the reports, and I wanted to pull up his name, is a beat reporter for the Chiefs. And like all the Xavier Worthy comments were awesome. But the one thing that you would heard over and over again was kind of Marquise Brown's going to be the X factor in this offense. He's getting peppered with targets. And honestly, if you look at Marquise Brown's history, when he plays with competent quarterbacks, so Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, when he actually plays with competent quarterbacks, he puts up awesome numbers. And now he has Patrick Mahomes. And by the way, sorry, defenses, you have Rashid Rice and also Travis Kelce. You cannot key on Marquise Brown. And you have Patrick Mahomes, like the most creative, innovative quarterback is going to get him the ball. So honestly, I would probably say, sorry, Amari Cooper, give me the upside of Hollywood Brown with Patrick Mahomes. Maybe that's the one that got away from me.
Yeah. And, he's kind of buried, quote unquote, on the depth chart, but I have a soft spot for Keenan Allen forever. I think he's still going to be very, very, very good in Chicago, and he's incredibly cheap for what he's capable of doing. Before we get out of here, Jamie did razz you a bit about Kyron Williams, and I appreciate that in the comments, but also has a legitimate question here. Let's end on this one.
Legitimate. The first one was bullshit, Jamie. All right. This is the legit question right here.
The first question was, Bobby, are you finally off Kyron yet? And then he proceeds to talk some smack. But I do like this question here. David Njoku or Ferguson in Dynasty? I'm worried about Ferguson with the fall will fall to Schultz value without Dak. So Dak Prescott's another quarterback we didn't really talk about in that group there, who, again, just 3 years ago set the league on fire before he broke his foot. And then he did very, very well last year with CeeDee Lamb as well. So Dak would also be a great consolation prize there. But Njoku or Ferguson for Dynasty, I'll just jump the gun here and go Ferguson because unfortunately we've had to wait in line for 7 years on Njoku.
Yeah, and so here's the other thing we did talk a little bit about this with Amari Cooper, but David Njoku was impacted by the Joe Flacco thing. By the way, him and Flacco were crushed. Insane. And by the way, this brings you way back. Remember, the old school, it was Todd Heap, and then it went to another guy, forget his name. He was like a flash in the pan tight end. And I drafted him. He had like a goose egg. And then the second week with Joe Flacco with the Ravens, he had 2 touchdowns and I lost my jibs. They were gone. There was no jibs. But anyway, Njoku was actually impacted by this. And I'm kind of concerned a little bit there. But I think Ferguson is one of my favorite buys in Dynasty as well, because the third receiver spot for the Dallas Cowboys is a huge question mark. I know Michael Gallup last year took a huge step back, but there really isn't a third receiver. I know Jalen Tolbert is getting some work right now. They have another guy, Ryan Forney, as well, that people are talking up. But I think the third receiver spot right now is Jake Ferguson. And by the way, Brandon Cooks really has never been a high volume receiver. So outside of CeeDee Lamb, you can look at Ferguson, could have a really good shot at being the number 2. Dak Prescott has shown really good connection with his tight ends over the last few years, even with Dalton Schultz prior. And honestly, this season, I actually have Jake Ferguson higher. So he's not only younger than David Njoku, he's got a better quarterback situation, I believe, right now. So I'm all in on Jake Ferguson this season.
Nice, man. I like that. All right, Joe, we're going to get out of here. Bob, always appreciate it. We just knocked out a single quarterback PPR Dynasty mock. We'll be back with you next Monday for another mock draft. Bob, before we get out of here, maybe just a couple of updates since you run the spaceship here for us at Razzball. Just a few things that people maybe if they're not dialed in, I know we got a lot of baseball folks starting to navigate over and check out what's going on the football side. So anybody late to the, just give us a 30-second review here on what's available on the website this year. We got some fun new tools. We've been having a lot of great stuff going on behind the scenes. So before we get out of here, give us an update on what's going on here behind the scenes at Razzball.
Well, first off, I want to make sure everybody knows the Razzball 6 is officially upon us. We have 4 days left to sign up. Get your asses over there and sign up. You can go to the website at football.razzball.com. There's a signups tab. You can always go check out Matty Styles. He's got things dropping every single day promoting the signups. It is a free league, by the way. And you get to compete against Andy Behrens, a couple great guys in the industry, Howard Bender as well, a bunch of guys that are competing this year. So join us right now. Razzball 6, the slogans, we'll set the lineups for you. I mean, come on, that's cute. I love every second of that. So go check it out. You're free. We got prizes for first place. That's always fun. On the website, by the way, we're super excited. If you haven't been to razzball.com and you haven't checked out the slot versus wide tool, what are you doing? We have broken out fantasy points allowed by defense in the slot versus out wide. This is a game-changing tool for free. Go check it out. And by the way, this year we have expanded it even further. We now have home and away splits. We have wins versus losses data. So you can actually identify when to avoid a player if they're on the road, if they're heavily favored versus a big road dog. Do they score less points? We're going to have great splits all free on Razzball. And of course, if you want even more in-depth data, we have our premium subs you can find on razzball.com. So go check it out. And by the way, all these guys, you got Sky Guasco, Matthew Styles, Derek Favret, you got Ben Waz, you got Jeff, you got a bunch of great guys dropping content every single day starting now. So go to razzball.com for it all.
We got a ton of fun, yo. For my man, Bobby LaMarco, at Bobby LaMarco, I'm your host, Sky Guasco, at Sky Guasco on the Xbox. We'll catch you next time. Make sure to catch everything on the podcast side as well, everywhere you're listening to your audio, the Razzball Fantasy Football podcast show. Everything at football.razzball.com for all of our articles. And of course, right here on the YouTube channel to make sure you're catching everything that we have to offer for you all week long and all summer long as well. And again, we'll be back with you here shortly to make sure that we get more mock drafts and more episodes all the way up until kickoff and ready to go in September. Keep it down here at Razzball. We'll catch you next time. For Bob, I'm Sky. We are out of here.